They told you the reason you are exhausted is because you are not strong enough. They told you that if you just pushed harder, if you stopped complaining, if you proved yourself with more hours, more effort, more sacrifice, then things would finally get better. But every time you gave more, the goalposts moved further away. Every time you thought you had reached the limit, the demands increased. You believed them, because the world around you kept repeating the same story. If you are tired, you are weak. If you are struggling, you are failing. If you can't keep up, you don't deserve to be where you are. But what if the truth is this: you were never the problem? The exhaustion you feel is not proof of weakness, but evidence of survival inside a system designed to drain you until nothing is left. Think about the countless mornings you woke up and told yourself, "Today I'll do better. Today I'll prove them wrong." You dragged yourself out of bed even when your body screamed for rest. You forced a smile when your heart was heavy. You nodded along when people told you to just hang in there. And yet, no matter how much you gave, it was never enough. The weight on your shoulders didn't lighten, it grew heavier. The hours grew longer, the expectations sharper, the silence inside you louder, and all the while, you carried the secret belief that maybe they were right. Maybe you really were not strong enough. Maybe this was all your fault. This is the lie that breaks people: the belief that exhaustion is weakness. But exhaustion is not weakness. Exhaustion is the body's testimony, the mind's cry, the soul's proof that the demands placed on you are inhuman. You did not collapse because you lacked discipline. You collapsed because no one can thrive in a system that only takes and never gives. And the cruelest part is this: while the system devours your energy, your joy, your identity, it convinces you that you are to blame for your own destruction. That is the prison most people never even realize they are in. You are not alone in this. Millions of people wake up every day with the same emptiness, the same fatigue, the same gnawing voice inside that whispers, "Why can't I handle this?" The truth is not that you can't handle it. The truth is that no one can. The system was never built to honor your humanity. It was built to exploit it. And the more you try to prove your worth inside it, the more it steals from you. 2,000 plus characters reached. Sitya and Raki, and that is why this conversation matters. Because if you have ever blamed yourself for being tired, if you have ever looked in the mirror and thought, "I should be stronger," you need to hear this clearly. You are not the failure here. The system is. So, before we go deeper, take a second to support this message. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share it with someone who needs to know they are not alone. Every interaction helps this truth reach the people who are still trapped in silence, still believing the lie that their exhaustion is weakness. Together, we can break that silence. So let me leave you with a question I want you to wrestle with. What would change in your life if you finally stopped believing that exhaustion meant you were weak, and started seeing it as proof that you have been stronger than anyone could imagine? Leave your answer in the comments, because your story may be the very thing that inspires someone else to stop carrying shame that was never theirs. My name is Christina Maslach, and for decades my life's work has been studying burnout. Not as a passing trend, not as a buzzword, but as a psychological reality that has consumed millions of lives. I have spoken with doctors who break down after endless shifts, teachers who once loved their classrooms but now dread walking into them, parents who sacrifice everything for their families, yet still feel they are failing, entrepreneurs who look successful on the outside but secretly feel hollow inside. And I can tell you with absolute certainty, the exhaustion you carry is not proof that you lack discipline. It is not proof that you are lazy or weak. It is the consequence of living inside a system that demands more than any human being can ever give. When I began this work, burnout was not a word most people knew, but I saw it everywhere. I saw it in the eyes of people who smiled politely while their spirit was quietly fading. I saw it in the bodies that kept pushing long after they should have stopped. I saw it in the stories of people who believed they were broken when, in truth, they were simply crushed by expectations that no one could sustain. And over the years, through research, interviews, and the lived experiences of countless individuals, I realized something chilling. Burnout does not discriminate. It affects men and women, young and old, those at the bottom and those at the top. Success does not protect you. Education does not protect you. Money does not protect you. Because burnout is not about who you are, it is about the environment you are trapped in. The system teaches you to blame yourself. It tells you that if you just tried harder, you would feel better. that if you just had more discipline, you would succeed, that if you just managed your time better, you would finally find balance. But my research proves the opposite. The harder you push inside a broken system, the faster it consumes you. The more you sacrifice, the less it gives back. And instead of rewarding your effort, it convinces you to sacrifice even more. This is not a personal failure. It is a structural failure. And you need to hear that clearly, because the guilt you have been carrying all these years was never yours to carry. I remember one nurse who broke down in tears during our interview. She told me she loved her patients, that caring for them was her calling, but she no longer felt like she had anything left to give. Every time she thought she had reached the bottom, the hospital demanded more hours, more shifts, more responsibility. When she finally collapsed, they told her she just wasn't tough enough for the job. She believed them until she realized that hundreds of her colleagues were experiencing the same thing. Was it possible that all of them were not tough enough? Or was it that the system itself was demanding inhuman endurance? That realization changed her life, and it is the same realization I want you to carry now. It is not you, it is the system. Burnout is not solved by sleeping more, drinking water, or taking a short vacation. These things may ease the symptoms temporarily, but they do not address the cause. You cannot recover from a broken system by simply resting inside of it. The real problem is not your lack of discipline, but the constant, unrelenting demands that drain your humanity. When you understand that, the shame begins to loosen its grip. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and you begin to ask, "Why am I being asked to endure this in the first place?" That shift in perspective is the beginning of reclaiming your dignity. And I want you to know this truth. If you feel tired, if you feel unmotivated, if you feel like you've lost the spark that once gave you joy, it does not mean you are broken. It means you are human. It means you have limits, and those limits are not flaws. They are proof that you are alive. For too long, society has told you to erase your limits, to treat yourself like a machine, to keep producing until there is nothing left. But you are not a machine. You are not an endless resource. And the fact that you feel exhausted is not evidence of weakness. It is evidence that your humanity is still intact. So let me turn this to you now. Have you ever blamed yourself for being tired, when deep down you knew the demands on you were impossible? Have you ever looked at your life and wondered why doing everything right still left you feeling empty? If you have, I want you to share that in the comments, because by admitting your truth, you not only free yourself from the guilt, you give someone else the courage to realize they are not alone. And when we begin to see clearly that the exhaustion is not our fault, we take the first step toward demanding something better. The world has taught you a dangerous lie, that effort fixes everything. From the moment you were young, you were told to try harder, push longer, never give up. And so you did. You woke up early, stayed up late, sacrificed weekends, sacrificed health, sacrificed joy. You convinced yourself that if you just gave a little more, things would finally get better. But here is the cruel truth. Inside a broken system, effort doesn't free you. It traps you. The harder you push, the deeper you sink. The more you give, the less you have left for yourself. And no matter how much you sacrifice, it is never enough. I have spoken to countless people who believed effort would save them. A father who worked 2 jobs to provide for his family, convinced that the exhaustion was proof of his love. A young woman who stayed at the office long after everyone else had gone home, hoping that, if she proved her worth, she would finally be respected. A student who studied until his body shook with fatigue, desperate to live up to expectations that no one could meet. Every one of them believed that effort was the solution. Every one of them collapsed under the weight of a truth they could not escape. No amount of personal discipline can repair a system designed to consume you. The system rewards effort only by demanding more. You worked late tonight. Tomorrow the deadline will be tighter. You sacrificed your health to finish a project. Next week the workload will double. You skipped time with your family to say yes to one more task. That yes will become the new standard, and no one will remember what it cost you. This is the trap, believing that effort will finally buy you freedom, when in reality it only feeds the cycle that keeps you trapped. And here lies the greatest injustice. When you collapse, the system doesn't take responsibility. It doesn't admit that it demanded too much. Instead, it blames you. You weren't resilient enough. You didn't manage your time well. You lacked discipline. It takes your exhaustion, the exhaustion it created and uses it as proof that you were the problem all along. That is the lie millions are still living under. But let me be clear. Exhaustion is not proof of weakness. Burnout is not evidence that you are lazy. It is the body's alarm, the mind's cry, the soul's rebellion against demands that no human being can meet. You are not broken for collapsing. You are human for reaching your limits. And your limit is not shameful. Your limit is sacred. Think about how many times you told yourself, if I just try harder, it will get better. How many times you pushed through the pain, ignored the warning signs, silenced the voice inside that whispered enough. And then ask yourself, did it ever actually get better? Or did the demands only grow while you shrank inside yourself? That is the trap of effort. It convinces you that salvation is just one more sacrifice away, when in truth, salvation will never come from giving more to a system that only knows how to take. So let me turn this back to you. How many times have you believed that working harder would finally solve the emptiness you feel? How many times did you tell yourself that more effort would be enough, only to find yourself even more exhausted, even more drained, even more invisible? I want you to share your answer in the comments, because your story is proof that you are not alone. And when you dare to say out loud, it wasn't me, it was the system, you break the silence that keeps others trapped in the same cycle. Burnout rarely arrives with a loud crash. It sneaks in silently, disguising itself as normal tiredness, as just another stressful week, as something you believe you can push through, but over time, it becomes something else entirely. The system doesn't break you in one day, it wears you down piece by piece, until one morning you realize you no longer recognize yourself. The truth is this: the exhaustion you feel, the lack of joy, the emptiness that no amount of success can fill, these are not random weaknesses. They are symptoms of a system that was never built to sustain human beings. Let's talk about what this looks like in real life. You sleep a full night, but you wake up feeling like you never closed your eyes. You tell yourself you'll feel better once you get moving, but the heaviness follows you into the shower, into breakfast, into your commute. Your body isn't recharged because rest cannot repair what chronic demands have broken. That's the first sign fatigue that sleep can't fix. It's not because you're lazy. It's because your energy has been drained so deeply that recovery requires more than a few hours of rest. Then there's the loss of focus. At first, you think you're just distracted. You force yourself to pay attention, but the words blur, the tasks feel impossible, and your mind wanders even when you know the stakes are high. This isn't a lack of discipline. It's a brain under siege, struggling to function under constant stress. And yet, the system tells you it's your fault, that if you were stronger, you wouldn't be struggling to concentrate. The lie becomes louder the more your body speaks the truth. Another symptom is the emptiness that creeps into your victories. You achieve something you once dreamed of, and instead of joy, you feel nothing. Or worse, you feel relief that it's finally over, followed immediately by dread of the next demand. This is one of the most painful realities of burnout, the inability to feel alive in moments that should have mattered. The spark is gone, not because you don't care, but because caring has been squeezed out of you by relentless pressure. And then there's irritability. You snap at loved ones, not because they deserve it, but because you are carrying an invisible weight that no one can see. You feel guilty afterward, ashamed that your exhaustion spilled over into the people you love. But the truth is, this irritability is not a moral failing, it's a symptom, a signal that your emotional reserves are depleted, that the system has stolen so much from you that even kindness feels heavy. Perhaps the cruelest symptom is the silent voice of doubt that whispers, maybe, really am weak. Maybe I don't have what it takes. This voice doesn't come from you, it comes from years of being told that exhaustion equals failure. It's the system planting its message inside your mind until you confuse its lie with your own thoughts. That's the final betrayal. When you begin to believe that the problem is you, rather than the structures designed to exploit you. Millions live with these symptoms every day, thinking they are alone. But you are not alone. If you've ever dragged yourself through a day wondering why you can't shake the fatigue, if you've ever looked at your achievements and felt nothing, if you've ever snapped at someone you love and hated yourself for it, you are not broken. You are burned out by a system that demands too much. So now I want to turn the question to you. How many of these symptoms have you felt in your own life? Which one hit you hardest? The fatigue, the emptiness, the irritability, the doubt? Share your truth in the comments, because speaking it out loud is the first step to breaking the silence. And your words might be the exact reminder someone else needs to realize they are not weak. They are living proof of how broken the system really is. One of the most destructive tricks of the system is how it convinces you to carry guilt that was never yours. You collapse under impossible demands, and instead of asking why the demands exist, you ask what is wrong with you. That is the invisible prison. Shame that turns exhaustion into self-blame. You begin to measure your worth by your ability to endure pain, and every time you reach your limit, the system whispers, "See, you failed again." It starts subtly. You miss a deadline because you were juggling too many tasks, and immediately you feel guilt, as if your worth shrank with that one unfinished project. You say no to an extra responsibility, and the voice in your head calls you selfish. You feel the need to rest, but when you sit down, the guilt gnaws at you, telling you that you should be doing more. This guilt does not come from laziness, comes from years of conditioning, from being told that rest is weakness, that saying no is failure, that your limits are proof of inadequacy. I've seen this cycle play out in countless lives. A young teacher who worked 15-hour days, convinced she wasn't doing enough for her students. When she finally reached exhaustion and asked for help, she was told she simply needed better time management. Her guilt deepened, because now she believed she was not only failing her students, but failing at managing herself. A man in his 40s, working 2 jobs, broke down when he realized he hadn't spent real time with his children in months. Instead of blaming the impossible financial demands placed on him, he blamed himself for not being a better father. This is the cruelty of the cycle. No matter how much you give, guilt convinces you it's never enough. The cycle of guilt feeds on comparison. You look around and see others who seem to handle the pressure better. You convince yourself they are stronger, more disciplined, more resilient. But what you don't see is the cost they are paying in silence, the sleepless nights, the anxiety, the emotional collapse behind closed doors. The system hides those truths, showcasing only the polished surface, so you internalize the lie. If they can do it, why can't I? The reality is, many of them can't. They are breaking too. But the culture of guilt keeps everyone silent, trapped in the same shame. And then comes the cruelest part. Guilt robs you not only of energy, but of identity. You forget who you were before exhaustion became normal. You lose sight of the passions that once fueled you, the joy that once defined you. All that remains is the constant pressure to prove yourself, to justify your existence by producing more, doing more, giving more, giving more. The guilt convinces you that you don't deserve love, rest, or peace until you've done enough, and enough never comes. That is why the cycle is a prison. It keeps you running toward a finish line that will never exist. But here is the truth. The guilt is not yours. It belongs to the system that taught you to equate exhaustion with failure. It belongs to the culture that rewards silence over honesty, sacrifice over health, endurance over dignity. The guilt you feel is borrowed. It was handed to you by expectations no one can meet. And yet, you carry it as if it were your own, punishing yourself for being human. Now, I want you to reflect on this. How many times have you blamed yourself for being tired, when deep down you knew no one could have endured what you were carrying? How many times have you let guilt steal your joy, your rest, your identity? Share it in the comments, because speaking that truth is the first step to dropping the weight. And maybe your story will remind someone else that they are not weak. They are simply caught in a cycle that was designed to keep them there. At some point, something inside you whispers that you cannot keep living this way. It might come after years of exhaustion, or in a single moment of clarity when you realize you are not weak. You are simply carrying a weight that was never meant to be yours. This is the turning point, the moment when you stop asking, "What is wrong with me?" and start asking, "Why am I being asked to endure the impossible?" That question is the spark of transformation, the birth of a new strength, because true strength is not found in breaking yourself to fit a broken system. True strength is found in recognizing the injustice, refusing to carry shame that isn't yours, and daring to set limits where none were respected before. I have witnessed this moment in countless people's lives. A mother who once thought she had to give every ounce of herself to her family, until one day she realized that by constantly saying yes to everyone else, she had said no to herself. She stopped apologizing for needing rest. She stopped calling herself selfish for protecting her energy. She learned that loving herself was not betrayal, it was the only way she could keep loving others without losing who she was. That shift changed her entire life. There was a man who spent decades climbing the corporate ladder, believing his worth depended on how much he produced. When he finally collapsed from exhaustion, he thought he had lost everything. But in that collapse, he discovered freedom. He realized that stepping off the treadmill of constant demands didn't make him weaker, gave him back his dignity. He set boundaries for the first time, saying no without guilt, choosing health over approval. And suddenly, the respect he had chased for years began to come naturally, not because he worked himself to death, but because he finally worked from a place of wholeness. The turning point is not about quitting life or running away. It is about reclaiming your humanity. It is about seeing clearly that your exhaustion is not proof of weakness, but evidence of survival in a system that was never fair. It is about refusing to measure your worth by the demands of people who only know how to take. It is about saying, I am enough, even if I do less. I am worthy, even if I say no. I am strong, not because I carry everything, but because I finally dared to put some things down. What makes this transformation so powerful is that it begins in silence, inside of you, when you choose a different story, and then it spreads. Others see you saying no without apology, resting without guilt, reclaiming joy without shame. They realize they can do the same. One act of courage ignites another, and suddenly the lie that exhaustion is weakness begins to crumble. This is how systems change, not when one person collapses silently, but when many people rise together, refusing to carry guilt that never belonged to them. And I want you to know this. You already have everything you need to make that turn. The strength is not something you must earn by proving yourself. It is already within you, hidden under layers of guilt and exhaustion, waiting to be uncovered. The fire that burned you down can also be the fire that builds you back up. The system may have tried to strip you of your dignity, but the moment you see the truth, it loses its power over you. So, I leave you with this question. What boundary could you set today that would remind you your worth is not defined by endless effort? What small act of courage could you take that says, I am no longer blaming myself for a broken system? Share it in the comments, because your answer may be the key that unlocks someone else's transformation. So tell me, how many times in your life have you blamed yourself for being exhausted, when deep down you knew the demands were impossible? How many times have you whispered, I'm not strong enough, without realizing that the system was designed to make you feel that way? This is the question I want you to face, because the truth is brutal. You have been carrying guilt that was never yours. The fatigue that weighs on your body, the doubt that steals your confidence, the shame that silences your voice. These are not signs of weakness. They are the fingerprints of a system that feeds on your energy and then calls you broken when you finally collapse. Think of the countless times you said yes when you wanted to say no. The nights you stayed up working while your body begged for rest. The mornings you dragged yourself out of bed because quitting was not an option. You told yourself this was strength, that one more sacrifice would prove your worth. But what if strength was never about enduring the impossible? What if strength was the courage to admit that no one should be asked to endure it in the first place? The system thrives on silence. As long as you blame yourself, nothing changes. As long as you see exhaustion as weakness, you keep feeding the cycle. That's why speaking your truth matters. That's why your story matters. When you say out loud, it's not me, it's the system, you break the spell that keeps millions of others trapped in shame. You become living proof that exhaustion is not a flaw, but a signal that the demands placed on you are inhuman. I have seen people rise from the ashes of burnout not because they suddenly became stronger, but because they finally saw the truth. A woman who once believed she was failing as a mother realized she was carrying expectations that no human could meet. A man who thought he was weak for not surviving 80-hour work weeks discovered that even the strongest body collapses under cruelty disguised as discipline. When they shifted the blame from themselves to the system, they began to heal. They began to reclaim joy. They began to live again. And here's the provocation I want to leave with you. What would change in your life if you stopped carrying that guilt? What would shift if you dared to say, I am not broken? The system is. Imagine the weight that would lift off your shoulders. Imagine the energy that would return to your days. Imagine the dignity that would come back into your reflection. That is not fantasy. That is the reality waiting for you. When you stop believing the lie that your exhaustion is proof of failure, But I don't want this to just stay as imagination. I want you to speak it into reality. Because words have power. Your story has power. So tell me in the comments, how many times have you blamed yourself for being exhausted, when in truth, the fault was never yours? And what would your life look like if you finally stopped believing that lie? Don't underestimate what your words can do. Someone will read your comment and realize they are not alone. Someone will read your truth and find the courage to tell their own. And together, those voices become a chorus too loud for the system to ignore. You have carried so much weight on your shoulders. For years, you believed that exhaustion was your fault, that the problem was weakness in you. But now you see it clearly. It was never about you. It was the system all along. And that realization changes everything. Because once you understand that you are not broken, you stop punishing yourself. You stop blaming your soul for being human. You stop apologizing for having limits. Limits are not weakness. They are proof that you are alive. They are the boundaries that protect your spirit, your dignity, your worth. Faith begins where guilt ends. The moment you decide that your exhaustion is not shameful but sacred, you begin to rebuild your life from the inside out. It doesn't happen overnight. Healing is not a straight line. There will still be days when you feel drained, when the old voice of guilt whispers in your ear. But now, you know the truth, and the truth is stronger than the lie. You can look that voice in the eye and say, I am not the problem. I am not broken. The system may have failed me, but I refuse to fail myself. Every act of courage begins small. It might be saying no when you used to say yes. It might be resting without apologizing. It might be admitting to someone you trust, I am tired, and I deserve better. These are not signs of weakness. These are victories. They are proof that you are rising, that you are refusing to let the system write your story. You are writing a new one where your worth is not defined by how much you endure, but by who you are when you finally stop carrying guilt that was never yours. And let me tell you this, you are not alone in this journey. Millions of others are awakening to the same truth. They are realizing that exhaustion is not an individual flaw, but a collective signal that the structures around us are broken. When you speak your truth, you give others permission to speak theirs. When you heal, you inspire healing in those who are watching. Transformation is never just personal, it always ripples outward. And your voice, your courage, your story might be the very light someone else needs to find their way out of the darkness. So hold on to hope. Believe that your best days are not behind you, but ahead. Believe that the fire that once burned you down can be the same fire that rebuilds you stronger. Believe that your humanity is not a weakness, it is your greatest strength. And never forget, you are not the problem. You never were. If this message spoke to you, if it made you stop and think about your own journey, then I invite you to do something simple but powerful like this video. Subscribe to the channel and join this community of voices refusing to stay silent. Every like, every subscription, every comment is a declaration. We are not broken, we are awakening. And don't miss the next video, because we will go even deeper into the truth the world doesn't want you to hear. The truth about how to reclaim your energy and take back your life from a system that was never built to honor your humanity. You won't want to miss it.